We are here to chat today about what a day in the life of one of our outreach workers looks like. So feel free to pop in the chat any questions you have at any time, and we'll try to get those questions answered. We do have a few of the most common questions that folks are asked, and a few that I wanted to ask. So we'll get started really with just what a typical day in your a typical work day in your life looks like.
Okay, cool. Well, I guess I've been here for just over a year, so I've gotten a lot more used to my routine now, and so my routine kind of starts with we come in, I make my tea.
Obviously, a very important person.
Very important. I have to have my tea first thing in the morning. So I make my tea, sit down, kind of check any emails, any Teams messages. That's boring, not exciting. But for most days, in the mornings, we will do outreach. So that means packing up our backpacks with the supplies that we have here in the space and bringing them out with us as we go walking around. Sometimes we do driving on days with poor weather. And so we have a lot of freedom and flexibility to kind of go wherever in the city, in Calgary, that we feel like we want to go. So I very much like to tell people we go where the wind takes us this day. We have general ideas of where to go in the city, but a lot of the little turns down alleyways or what areas we're going to is just really based on, for me, I should say at least gut instincts, gut feelings. Yeah, very much believe in right place, right time. So that's usually what the mornings are like. We're usually out for about an hour and a half, 2.5 hours, anywhere in between there. And then usually try to come back over lunch. And then our drop-in space opens up at 1. So from 1 to 4, the outreach team is the first face that folks see when they come in the front door. So we're the greeting party, I would say. So that's it's a really fast way to get to know folks, especially if we see people on outreach and they're coming back to the space. There's that recognition as that, if that's the first face that you see, so we'll support the drop-in space through the afternoon, and that typically looks folks come in looking for supplies, for food, and by supplies I guess I mean safer sex and safer substance use supplies. We have food that is graciously donated through the Leftovers Project, I believe, or Second Harvest, from Starbucks. So we have a local Starbucks that donates pastries and sandwiches, and then we'll supplement that with fruit and yogurt usually. And so a lot of the afternoon is running around taking coffee orders, asking folks how they take their coffee, warming up sandwiches, bringing snacks out for folks. Each afternoon is a little bit different. Right now we're on a Star Wars kick for the last few weeks, so we have finished the prequels and the older sequels, I don't know, the older movies, the original Star Wars movies, and now we're into The Mandalorian. So we're really, that's kind of what we've been doing every afternoon. It's really cool. We have folks who are very dedicated to finding out what happens to Baby Yoda. So
obviously,
of course.
Yeah.
But we also have coloring, painting supplies that we have out. So we do a lot of arts and crafts in the space. Every so often we have Indigenous knowledge keepers come in through our Indigenous communities case management program. So Isaac is our case manager for that. So we'll have cultural supports available for folks. And yeah, do a lot of movies. We do a lot of like music video watching too, I would say. And so that's always fun. The vibes are good when someone asks for the remote and puts us on to some new music. So that's fun.
Do music videos or movies or activities in the space help to start conversation or build a little bit of that like community connection in that space?
Yeah, definitely. It's nice when like there's like multiple people in the space who are like vibing to the same thing. That definitely builds some bonds and like gives us the opportunity to like we were watching Lord of the Rings also a couple months ago, because both Star Wars and Lord of the Rings are like 3-hour long movies, which is like the perfect amount of time to like run start to finish in our drop-in space. And also they're just like visually appealing and like very beautiful, right? And I like I made a joke. Everyone was like super intently watching the second Lord of the Rings movie. I'm so sorry. Don't get mad at me. I don't remember what it's called. All I remember is like the actor who plays Aragorn. I don't know if you can like picture him in your head. Yeah. I was like, oh, tell me this is not like the sexiest man alive right now, and everybody just like burst out laughing, and so I think those like connection pieces are just really funny. I don't know. I think it's also me like showing my age, and so people are like find that amusing as well. But that kickstarted a conversation about, is Legolas or Aragorn the hotter character? And I was like, no, it's Aragorn. Are you kidding me? But someone was very like intent. They're like Orlando Bloom and everything, and I was like, I understand and I respect that. So yeah, there's definitely we have a lot of fun here, I would say. So.
Yeah. And do you see people who are engaging in those kind of activities returning often?
Yes. Yeah. We have like, there's folks that we've met on outreach who've like heard of us but haven't really been to the space, mm-hmm. and will like come back, check it out, and be like, or people who come and like, oh, I've heard about this place, haven't been, and like come and will then hang out and continue to like come back. So we definitely have like a lot of familiar faces, mm-hmm. which is really nice, and that obviously is like really good for relationship building and that reciprocal like trust building between folks accessing our space and feeling safe here, and allowing us to like learn from them and like let us into a little piece of their lives, right? So
yeah. Does it happen often that conversations that happen on outreach entice people to come into the space in the afternoon?
Yeah, I would say that like if we meet someone on outreach who is like stating that they have like a lot of needs that they need support with like addressing, we'll do like the best that we can with them in that moment, and then say like, if you want to like fill out this paperwork or you need to use the phone, like you can come by 1 to 4 Monday to Friday, and so there's a lot of conversations like that where we see people come back, and honestly, like a lot of the time when we meet folks and we say like we're with Safelink, people like do recognize us as like the Sinulta people. Like if we say, oh, our office is in Snelta, and they're like, oh yeah, I've like heard of you guys. Like we get that, I would say like 8 or 9 times out of 10, which is pretty cool, and I think also speaks to like the community building that we're doing. So yeah.
And those activities in the space are a really great conversation and relationship builder. Out in outreach on the street, when you're in downtown or when you're in the Snelta area, or anywhere that you go, what do those conversations look like when you don't have those kind of Legolas helping us make jokes?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so obviously, like I'm talking about like the activities that we have going on, but a lot of the time, folks just want like a place to maybe have a nap, hang out for a bit. You don't often get the opportunity during the daytime, I would say, for folks who are like sleeping rough to go to a place and just hang, you know?
Yeah.
There's a lot of barriers to accessing drop-in spaces. It's a little bit more like through the winter. There's more of those like warming stations open during the day, but then when those end, there's like less places for folks to go. So a lot of times people just maybe want to have a nap, pop in, have some lunch, chat with folks. Like there's like social networks, obviously. So people see old friends and want to like sit, hang out, catch up. And are like totally uninterested in talking with us, which I'm like, that's cool. Just grab your coffee, you do your thing. And yeah, that's part of that, like respecting other people's autonomy and them just existing as like a human being doing their thing, right? So
on outreach in the morning, are conversations more about getting folks what they want and letting them be, and like more in those kind of areas, or do you have long conversations while you're out in outreach?
Oh yeah, I just realized I didn't really answer the last question you asked me, so thanks for circling back. Yeah, so honestly, we have a lot of longer conversations with folks. Like something that like I'm learning is to like slow down and realize that there's like no rush to what we're doing. Like, you know, we're really focused on like not just having like a transactional like I'm going to give you what you asked for and I'm going to leave kind of thing. It is relationship building, community building. So we'll sit and talk with someone if that's what they need for as long as we're able, and try not to like rush those conversations unless like we are on like a timeline of like have to go somewhere after this and whatnot. But yeah, I think the most like beautiful days on outreach are the days when we get to hear people's stories, and or when people like we're allowed to hear people's stories and people want to talk, and maybe they just want to like hang out. I was gonna say shoot the SHIT, but I don't think I can say that. Yeah, so like we'll have those conversations about what kind of services we offer if someone's asking for that or stating that like they need help with the various things, right? But a lot of the conversations are just hanging out, like how's the day going, what's going on in the neighborhood. If people know us, they're maybe more willing to open up and share about what they have going on. But really it's a very varied experience, I would say, because they can sit and talk with somebody for half an hour, provide emotional support, and or you can just like have a real quick conversation where someone's like, do you know where I go for this? And we go, yeah, you could try here or here, like give people options, and they go, cool, thanks,
bye.
But yeah, we do very often meet people on outreach, give them our outreach team cards and have our address. They also have a phone number if someone has like access to a phone. And so we'll get calls from people that we've met on outreach who are like, we met you guys, and hoping to talk about this. Or like, so that's also like really cool. We also have conversations with like community members who maybe ask about like the naloxone that's hanging off of our backpack because it's clipped onto our backpack. It's pretty obvious like what we're doing if you know what naloxone is. So a lot of questions about like what is that, or where can I get that, or like what are you guys doing?
Why are you all wearing gray yellow backpacks?
Yes, yeah. So I mean, like I should say the conversations aren't super frequent, but ever so often we do have people stop and like ask.
Do you have a pitch?
A pitch? Oh.
That you give them? Folks who are like, who are you? What do you do?
I say we are the Safelink outreach team. We're based in Sonalta. We're out checking on folks in the community, providing basic needs supports. Depending on how like into the conversation somebody wants to go, I could go like, we are enacting like a tangible on the ground public health intervention. But to the average person, they don't care that much, right? So like, it's like, yeah, we're doing outreach, we check on folks, and we provide like basic needs supplies, and kind of like leave it at that. And if there's like follow-up questions, then we can get into it. But
I know a lot of questions come from community and service providers who aren't our clients, and they are often asking, well, how do you stay safe?
Ooh, good question. So I like to address it partially because I heard this a lot from my grandma and from my dad and his friends about like, aren't you concerned about your safety, especially when I first started? And I was like, no. Like I'm pretty comfortable talking to other human beings. Like I'm not inherently afraid of other human beings, but I think just as a team, we recognize that we're meeting folks in a like variety of different circumstances, and just because someone might be having like a bad day doesn't mean that we need to be worried about what that person's going to do to us, because I choose to believe that people are inherently kind, good, more people, and like I think that relationships, when you get to know someone and see them and they see you as you're being yourself, your genuine self, and you see each other just like on a very human, spiritual level, the trust and relationships that are built by connecting with people like that are what, I mean, like, what's the word, like, when you're like known or recognized, that's what keeps you safe. There's no like boogeyman that we're scared of, like, or that puts us in danger. I always will also tell people that I've never been in a situation where I have feared for my life or feared that I was going to get harmed. And that, I think, is something that can be like surprising for folks, but like we're not, obviously, like, you read situations carefully and you like use situational awareness, and if someone's having a bad day and doesn't want to talk with you, you're not going to like push it, and you're not going to go right up to the person and be like, do you need anything? Like and so but like it's not an inherently dangerous job from my experience, because all of our folks are really like lovely, and especially like I said, when you know someone, even if there's like a big group of people but one person recognizes you,
Right.
like
Changes the whole vibe.
changes the vibe, but it also like, oh, that's the word I was looking for. Gives you like it's like street cred in a sense.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Like people know who you are, know what you're there to do. And like yeah, that's kind of the gist of it. Also when we approach people, we'll like kind of stop, turn our backs to someone with like, because it shows the naloxone hanging off our backpacks, just like, hey, do an outreach. For the most part, folks will like see the naloxone kits and like know what you're doing as well. But that's also part of that like spatial situational awareness by like
Mm-hmm.
if you're approaching someone you don't know and like you don't recognize them, you just go like, hey, how you doing? This is what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
You need anything? Can I come chat? They say no. It's like, cool, have a good day. But yeah, I think that's just a misconception about the work that we do. And I think it's important to address that, and like we get lots of questions about it for sure.
And we know that there is stigma that our communities that we're working with face, especially in terms of, you know, the association of aggression and people who are living rough or living not in a house. So trying to combat that, I think, is a big part of your job, it sounds like.
Very much so, yeah. It's I think like a lot of the stigma and like moral panic that is stoked about people who use drugs and people experiencing homelessness are blown out of proportion, I would say. And so unfortunately, that's like a really unfortunate thing to like read in the media. And is like deeply upsetting, right? Because people are people, and very often people become numb or desensitized to the fact that you're seeing another human being, but you're not seeing another human being. You're seeing the other, and the other scares you, and all you see is those immediate feelings that come up, maybe of fear or what you've been taught, what you've been, like heard, and that's like not to like discount situations where people have felt afraid or felt like they were in danger. I think like those are valid feelings that come up, but it takes a lot of work and non-judgmental curiosity to question where those feelings come from. Because
there's a sense of perceived safety rather than actual safety in a situation.
Yeah.
And the perceived safety comes from those like stigmas and those messages that we hear.
Yeah. Like, were you actually unsafe or did you just feel unsafe? And that's like an uncomfortable question to ask yourself, an uncomfortable question to be asked. But like, it's like, were you physically assaulted, or was somebody just talking to themselves loudly a few feet away from you and you felt uncomfortable with that? You know, there's a whole spectrum of that, right? So
hence treating people with humanity.
Good plug.
Thanks.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing from you and to connect some of the questions that are being asked is that a lot of the skills you use on outreach are the relationship building skills and relationship and rapport and trust building among the community. And those are kind of knowing your situational awareness, knowing when someone's body language is, I don't want to talk to you, versus I'm curious about what you're offering. So it sounds like to me those like relationship building and situational awareness skills are some of the ones that you're utilizing when you're on outreach.
Yeah. Like for me personally, I want to thank the restaurant industry for that.
That's so true.
Because I spent a lot of time serving, and when you're serving in a restaurant, you have to be able to like really quickly read the vibe of a table.
Totally.
To like tailor your approach. And so I think of that in a way. But also, I think when you just show up as your true self, your authentic self, and people can see that when you're not putting on like a facade and pretending to be something or someone.
Sure.
I think there's like that there's already an inherent like power dynamic and hierarchy of like your positionality as a worker versus a person in a position requiring support or asking for support. You have to be aware of your own positionality and the perhaps like perceived authority that you have, and how that plays into an interaction, what that like represents. So like a lot of the times like when we're hanging out with people, we're like I very much will try to just like talking to somebody like I would talk to like my friends or like my colleagues, my peers. Like I'm not
using the social worker voice.
Yeah, not using like the social worker like jargon kind of stuff. Like I think that's just really important for making sure that you're like consciously bringing yourself to like a more level or more equal accessible level of connection with somebody. So yeah, I think that's really, those skills are like very important, and I feel very like grateful and also like lucky to have that come naturally to me, not to toot my own horn or anything. But
you're allowed to toot your own horn here.
Okay.
So one of the questions in the chat, you mentioned that you hand out naloxone kits and those are hanging off your backpack. How often are you using those kits and responding to poisonings? Is that something that you do on your job daily?
Daily, no. I'm knocking on wood. But it really depends, I think, what's circulating in the supply. Like we can go months without having a poisoning occur and then have 5 happen in 1 week, and then go another few months without coming across one. It is something that we're like prepared for, although I don't know if it ever gets easier. Like for me personally, I like do find it very difficult to be in a situation with that high adrenaline, high stress, and every poisoning's a little bit different too, situationally. And so that it is like a reality of our job. But like I'm also really lucky to have like such a supportive and wonderful and like skilled team that we all take on different roles within like the situation. So like someone might call 911 and relay information about the situation to 911. One person's doing like rescue breaths. One person is preparing the naloxone. One person is doing like crowd control. If we have 4 people, right?
Yeah.
If there's only 2 of you, you take on
more
roles, right? But I would say it's really hit or miss. It's something that you have to always be prepared for when you go out. But it's no good answer really, but it happens. So
to relay something that was said in the chat, someone says that during an interview, someone was asked about the risks associated with the role, and this person says the best answer they ever heard was someone who said driving to work.
So true. I tell this story also very frequently. I use this as an example like quite a bit, but tying back to like the restaurant industry, I've something I said directly to my dad was I have never felt unsafe at work here, but I've felt unsafe multiple times serving in bars, and being like uncomfortable and feeling unsafe with harassment that was experienced, sexual innuendos and whatnot, being like followed to my car kind of thing. Like that made me feel unsafe. But I've never felt unsafe doing this work. So, yeah, driving to work. Yeah, I do be hitting the curb. Yeah, so that too. Yeah.
And I know that there is a lot of care after that your team is able to provide when you come back from a hard day on outreach. What does care for yourself look like as an outreach worker?
Ooh, that's our trending topic of the last few months, I think. I would say that it's particularly difficult to not take work home with you, because you can't just turn off at least for me, I can't just turn off my brain and not think or worry or care about folks. And that's very human of me and of many people. And I would say that it's definitely difficult to find and enforce those boundaries of like not bringing work with me into my quiet, peaceful moments for myself. Like I'm like, why am I in my yoga class in Shavasana at the end when you're just like laying there on the ground, and a random thought from my day will like pop up and be going, I wonder if this person got to where they need to go. And then I'm like, okay, I'm observing this thought and I'm glad and trying to let it go and just watch it pass, but it keeps like poking at me. So definitely I find that really difficult. And something I have found that's been really helpful is like, if I'm out doing something physically active, out with my friends, doing something that's like, I'm engaging my brain, doing something else, that like has nothing to do with work, that's when I find that like I have that almost like distraction in a sense. Not even distraction, like I'm just living my life and keeping my personal life and my work life separate. But
it's hard to do that when you care about the work that you do.
Yeah, it is. And I think that's just that we talk a lot about like moral injury for frontline workers, and just like how incredibly painful it is to walk alongside somebody and then come up against a systemic barrier that as just one person you can't address or can't get over. And like it's really difficult. It's really difficult hearing how people speak about our community from a place of stigma and being unkind, or even just a place of not knowing. And so that honestly is that's something that's really difficult. I've had some really great advice from like some of the older, I don't mean older, more experienced, thank you, the more experienced people in positions of leadership, or who have just been in doing frontline work for a very long time, being able to talk to them about these feelings and have them share how they coped with it. I received some really good advice a while ago that was like, I don't follow any accounts on social media that have anything to do with like the work that I'm doing, because if I'm going home and doom scrolling through like the news or through like comment sections about the public health crisis and the lack of humanity crisis that we find ourselves in, I'm just gonna get so like discouraged and beat down and angry at the world And what's that going to do? You know, like that's not helpful, nor is it productive in a way. Like it's not, I have all this anger and it's just bubbling inside me and it's not doing anything. How can I channel that into worrying about the things I can control and putting care into our daily work? So that's like a learning process, right?
There's a difference between knowing the systemic barriers that are in place and scrolling through the comment section on a news article that we know is going to be
upsetting.
Yes. Totally.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to pivot. You mentioned that there are days or times where we don't see a poisoning for a long period of time, and then sometimes there's higher concentrations. I know one of the things as an educator who works alongside with our outreach team, I'm often seeing and often talking about, the academic statistics that we see and the data tracking and things like that. One of the really valuable things that I see our outreach team doing is in our drop-in space, we have a drug checking or like a drug alert board. And being on the ground in our community, noticing those trends and hearing what people are talking about and what is, what are their current concerns, is a big part of your work. I guess, do you want to speak to some of the experiences you have in terms of recognizing those patterns that we can't always like see or track, or we don't see or track in the like big data world,
the empirical world?
Yeah.
Love me some qualitative narrative based data. The drug alert board is kind of like my baby. So when we do get drug alerts, we get them usually through like an AHS mailing list. They're not super frequent, unfortunately. So a lot of what we rely on is like community members reporting things to us. We've seen like definitely an uptick in people accessing testing strips. So we have test strips that are like fentanyl, benzo, and xylazine test strips. They are unfortunately like, we have a limited amount, but there's something that has actually proven to be very like useful and interesting for folks. Like a lot of people didn't know that test strips like that like existed, and they're pretty accessible, right? Obviously they don't give you like a whole picture of what might be in your supply, but they are like a very useful tool. And I think that we hear like community members give us reports of like, a lot of people have gone down, which means like they've began experiencing a poisoning in the last few days in certain areas. We'll hear that, and people say there's something going around that might be like this color, or we don't know what it is, but there's like something weird circulating in the supply that's different from what people are used to. And so that like knowledge empowerment is not only is it a way of like the community looking after one another, it's also a way of like empowering your decisions maybe about how you're going to use the substance. If you tested it and it wasn't, maybe something showed up in it that wasn't what you expected, then maybe maybe you can practice like starting with a test dose, starting low, going slow. Love that one. Or not using alone, having naloxone with you. And so that tool of empowerment is really important for folks to have available to them. So that's why we have them in the space. We also have them, we bring them with us on outreach. And yeah, I think it's very like valuable and like treasured knowledge that people feel vulnerable enough to say, hey, you're not a narc, so I'm gonna tell you about what's going on in the supply, you know. Yeah.
So do you often share that information? Do you hear from other agencies or other community outreach workers, those kinds of trends? Do you share information, or do you go on outreach with other agencies?
Yeah. So I'll clarify that we don't provide, like, we don't do on the spot drug checking with folks. That requires like a Health Canada exemption from the section like 50 of the criminal code, which is like anyways, that doesn't matter. But we have little like booklets that are in our test strip packs that show you step by step how to like do it. I'll like explain to folks in like a quick 30 seconds how you would use it, how you'd read it, and that, like, if anyone has further questions, we also have like our card in there too, if anyone needed to like come to a space and be like, I don't actually know what to do about this, you know, or how to use this. So I would say that we do go on outreach with other outreach teams. We have some really wonderful partnerships with CUPS opioid agonist therapy. That's what OAT stands for. Opioid agonist therapy team, who does referrals for methadone treatment, Suboxone treatment, Sublocade, stuff like that. We have a partnership as well with the Sutina Healthy Living Program, as well as the Siksika outreach program, the Walking the Wolf Trail outreach. Those are some really wonderful like current partnerships that we have going on. And then we will ever so often go with other agencies, maybe like one-offs or like not as frequently. We're like working on our schedule as well. But we have, I mean, this community is a pretty, this community of service providers is pretty small. And so everybody kind of is like 1 degree away from each other in a way. So we have a lot of contacts and connections with other agencies, other grassroots groups, and there's like a mutual respect and reciprocity there for sure, which is super lovely and appreciated. I'd say there's to an extent there's privacy that we want to like protect. If someone tells us about something going on in a certain area or maybe where they're staying, and it's not our business to tell other people that private information because it was shared with us in confidence. For drug alerts, if somebody comes to us with the test strips that they had used already, that have, like, let's say it was positive for something that was unexpected in what they had purchased, then, and they can tell us like what the color of it is or what it was sold as, that's like something that we'll try and share and get out there to folks. So there's good lines of communication, I would say, within the community. Privacy is always like one of those things that is at like the forefront of our mind, right? And like some folks have maybe have a really good relationship with us, but maybe not with another agency that they don't want information shared with them, right? And so that's something we'll always respect. We'll respect that autonomy. Yeah, does that kind of answer?
Yeah. Do we, one of the questions that we're getting is, do we provide on the spot drug checking with folks, or just provide people with the tools to do that? And
yeah, just the tools. We don't do that. That's the Criminal Health Canada exemption that we do not have, so we can't. Unfortunately, we can't have any drug checking here or out on the spot. But we can tell people how to use it, show them. But I'm not a drug checking technician, so.
And I know on outreach, one of the questions we often get is do you get questions from businesses or people in the community who are maybe struggling with or wanting to understand more how they can support the people in their neighborhood?
Occasionally, we occasionally do. I'm trying to think. I remember having a conversation. I think this was like last summer with a maintenance person at an apartment complex downtown who was like sweeping up some broken glass, I believe. And I talked to them about like the sharps disposal bins that we have, which they didn't like know were available. They were just like, oh, we've been waiting for the fire department to come pick them up, but that's like a really, not the most efficient use of resources, I would say. And I told them about like Alpha House has like a needle response team that comes and picks up sharps or broken glass as long as they're in like the bins. Or actually no, not as long as they're in the bins. I think they just pick up anything if you like send a picture and say where it is, or if you're not comfortable touching it. So that was like a really useful conversation in terms of just like addressing somebody's fears and maybe stigma, and being upset about debris, which is like understandable because it can be distressing to come across if you don't have any really knowledge of maybe what it was used for. So saying like, hey, there's a team that's actually dedicated to this definitely helps, like even just like mentally ease that a little bit of that stress.
We have a universal precautions education session that you can take.
Yep. Also a good plug. But yeah, so it is difficult to deal with if somebody is in a space where they have a lot of frustration, and that frustration is building up, and you are a representation of maybe what they perceive to be causing that frustration. It's very difficult to have that projected onto you. I mean, like I'm just like a sensitive person anyways, but like it does kind of suck to have somebody, doesn't even kind of suck, it really sucks to have somebody basically be like, your work is worthless, the people that you serve are worthless, when you care really deeply about the community and about the work you do. And like, it's just really terrible to hear people speak like that about others. So in conversations like that, I really have to practice like taking my ego out of it and my personal investment out of it, and just listening and almost just like detaching myself from the emotional side of it and just listening and being like, no, that's really hard. It's understandable, because sometimes people just want to be heard. Even if they're spewing really hateful things, they want to be heard for whatever reason. Because they don't feel like they're being heard anywhere else. And so, that's not an opportunity to address that's not an opportunity to address any of the stigma that's coming up, because the person is likely already escalated. If the approach is a little bit different, and more curious, and not attacking, then that maybe opens up a wider conversation. And like, we do often like invite people to come check out our space, even if they don't think it's like for them. It's really it's for anybody, right? And so that's a big part of like, hey, come see what we do. It's actually not that scary. You come in and there's like a bunch of homies watching Baby Yoda on the TV, and you're like, oh,
eating cake.
Literally, like, eating freaking cake pops.
Cake pops from Starbucks.
Yeah, just going, oh my god,
Baby Yoda is so cute.
Yeah. So like that, to get to that point some people are just unwilling to do that, and that's okay, because you can't. I'm working really hard to understand that you can't change everybody's mind. And if you go in thinking that you're going to change someone's mind, you're going to be disappointed. Someone has to come to those conclusions on their own, see something different on their own, right?
My favorite response to those situations is often, well, if you want to learn more, we have an education series on this.
Yeah. Check out our website.
Check out our website.
Please direct your concerns to my manager because my fragile little heart can't take this.
So a classic response.
Yeah.
So I know I'm gonna pivot again. Okay. One of the biggest parts that I see, one of the biggest parts of your job that I see is handing out safer substance use supplies. Mm-hmm. And I know it's also, connecting to what we previously talked about around noticing trends and noticing, I know that supplies can be a really good way of knowing what some of our trends in community are, like mm-hmm. how people are using and what they're needing. Mm-hmm. So right now, what are the most popular?
Inhalation supplies for sure. There is no there is brain moment. Sorry. There is a most popular supply, I would say, it's called a bubble pipe. So a bubble pipe it's like a little Pyrex glass tube that has like a little circular bubble on the end of it. They're the most popular because they're the most, from my knowledge, like universally usable for kind of anything, and just have like the most efficient and smoothest method of consumption. They also break the easiest because the bubble is part of the pipe is very like thin glass, and if it's overheated, you're supposed to like roast it like a marshmallow. But if you so like you're supposed to like have your light under it and do like that. But if you only hold like the flame in one spot for too long, it can like explode. Because anyways,
sharps.
Yeah, they shatter the easiest. But our inhalation supplies are the most popular. We have these big 50 packs of foil that are like
do you have your backpack with you?
I do have my backpack with
almost
me.
Like it was planned.
Well, no way. I can just show you. Anyways, these are foil that's used for like hair bleaching, so it's uncoated. So if you were to use like kitchen foil to smoke off of, like you would melt a substance in the foil and then smoke off of the foil. If you were to use a kitchen coating and you didn't burn the kitchen coating off of the foil, you're inhaling a lot more toxic chemicals than on an uncoated piece of foil. So we have these nice big 50 packs, which are super useful. And I would say, I guess I can literally just show you what a bubble.
This is what the whole backpack looks like.
Big yellow backpack. So like our inhalation supplies. This is a bubble. This is what I was like trying to talk about. Thank you. So that's the most popular for sure. We also have hammer pipes. It looks kind of like a dab rig. If anybody knows what like a dab rig is, where you're like taking shatter or concentrated cannabis and like heating it up with a blowtorch on like a big bong. That's how I explain this, because these were actually originally called like hammer pipes, and they were invented in the US, I believe, to transition people away from injecting heroin into smoking it, so it works better with like a more like sticky substance. That's what these look like. And then we have straight pipes. Straight pipes are just like this, essentially, without anything on the end. That didn't work. But without, it just looks like that. We have springs because people, to avoid people taking springs out of like naloxone kits or pens, you can use this as well, to like acts as like a little filter, catches residue inside of your pipe that you can reuse if you need. We've got screens, which is a replacement for Brillo. Brillo is like stainless steel wool. This is just like a little brass thing that you would like roll up that looks like a cookie. Whatever. It's very fine mesh, and you would like roll it up in a little ball and stick it in your pipe as well. So that's all of our inhalation stuff. We also give out like alcohol swabs and mouthpieces so that people can don't have to like share pipes, can have their own mouthpiece, keep it sterile.
You can always come by the office to get a tour of all of the different supplies.
Things. Yeah.
Or if you're out and about and see the yellow backpacks.
Yeah, I would say we also have like, when we're able to, we carry cigarettes with us. Usually, like, personally, we'll have them with us, and that's like my favorite way of explaining it is like it's like the best multi-use tool in the world because it's a relationship builder. It's a gift of tobacco. It's reciprocal respect. It's a de-escalation tactic. You go, hey, let's go outside. Let's have a smoke, chat a little bit. It also helps with withdrawal symptoms from what I have heard. If you're feeling real gross or real sick, it'll help with that little bit of kick of dopamine and help with like the shakes and the yucky feeling and getting that yucky taste out of your mouth. Everyone loves a cigarette for the most part. But yeah, so I'd say those are like the big trends that we have is like inhalation supplies the most. We also have like first aid that we carry with us, like bandages, sterile waters, Bactine, which is kind of like a polysporin. We have shorts and longs packs, so there's like needles and the sharps disposal bins. If anyone ever wants to carry one of these, we have to carry these with us all the time for like barbecue tongs too, and with barbecue tongs, so we pick up anything that we see, but also give these to folks who are receiving needles. And it's 12 on the dot. Sorry, everybody. But yeah, how do you keep up with evolving language? I would say a lot of the information that we have about like street slang or like how people refer to certain substances or certain tools comes from the people themselves. Like people are always informing our approach, right? So like we're constantly like learning from our folks, which is really beautiful. But I found out a little bit ago that bubbles are referred to as bats in Edmonton, which just like blows my mind because, and so when someone's asked for a bat, I'm like, are you from Edmonton? So like different places have different names for things. Mm-hmm. So it really depends on kind of like where you're coming from too. So
cool.
Yeah.
Well, thanks everyone for joining us. If you have more questions, you can always come by and ask our outreach staff. Like Alex said, it's a space where people can come and ask questions. We're not one of those services that is only open to certain people. So thanks for coming and thanks for chatting with us today. Yeah. Feel free to also reach out on our social media to ask questions.
Yeah, sorry if we missed any questions. And also, I rambled quite a bit, and I feel like if there's anything that was missed, feel free to reach out to social media. And
rambling is our favorite. Thank you, everybody, and I hope you have a really great day.
Yay!